Greetings to all of you and a hearty welcome to day 5 of our session on Java-based microservices. Before we proceed with the deliverables that we have planned for today, let us quickly have a look at the agenda. And as per the agenda, can you tell me how many modules we have completed and how many modules we are in progress at present? How many modules we have completed? Correct. The first 3 modules we have completed our discussions, which was on introduction to microservices, then introduction to Spring Boot. And yesterday I have given you an introduction to the Netflix OSS and Spring Cloud, right? And which is the module that we are in progress at present? The 4th module and point 1, right? 4.1, we are still looking at this. Yeah. Of course, in terms of setting up the Eureka server, we have already completed that activity. We've already looked at the configuration that might be required to configure your microservices to behave as Eureka clients. That also we have completed. But I will have to show you the microservices which behave as a Eureka client. And then I will also have to set up a multiple Eureka server and then show you how the entire stuff works, right? So we are in progress on chapter 4.1 and we'll continue today as well. And tomorrow we can move on to the other topics. Yeah. Just to reiterate what we have discussed yesterday, we were discussing about the registry service and discovery product or module available from Netflix OSS, which is Eureka, right? Now, if you have to set up and work with Eureka, there are 2 things you have to set up, right? Eureka server and the Eureka client. Eureka clients are nothing but our microservices, which will act as instances of the Eureka client. And then, of course, you have to set up a Eureka server. So if you all recollect, we have already set up the Eureka server. But just to quickly reiterate the steps that were involved in setting up and creating a Eureka server, we realized that Eureka server is nothing but a Spring Boot app with appropriate dependencies and annotations, right? You all remember the steps. Step 1, how to configure Eureka server. We have to add the dependency for Eureka server in the pom.xml file. So this is the step 1 to add the Eureka server dependency, right? Step 2 is go on to your main runnable class and annotate that class with this annotation called @enable Eureka server, right? So this is the annotation that you have to add. Then once this is ready, as the 3rd step, depending on whether you're configuring a single Eureka server or multiple Eureka servers, you will have to configure it in your application.yml file or application.properties file. So this is the configuration for a single Eureka server kind of setup. You all remember this? Can you quickly glimpse or go through the configuration and tell me? Yes, this is what we discussed yesterday, right? And this is the standard port on which Eureka runs, or Eureka. Usually this is standard port that is used for Eureka 8761, right? And you all recollect, if we are running my Eureka servers on multiple Eureka servers in a replicated sibling mode, this is how the configuration might look. You all remember yesterday we have discussed about all these things in detail. Yes, right. Again, today also, when I show you the demo, we will be using all of them. And once the Eureka server is set up and Eureka server is up and running, you can access the Eureka server and look at the dashboard. And the dashboard provides you the details of the instances and the other discovery server siblings, right? Now, once the Eureka server is up, it's now time for us to look at how to configure the Eureka client, isn't it? Yeah. So these were the steps that were involved in configuring the Eureka client. You all remember step 1 where we have to add this dependency for Spring Cloud Starter Netflix Eureka client in the pom.xml file, right? So this is step 1 to add this Eureka client dependency. Then step 2, you all remember this? You have to annotate your main runnable class with @enable discovery client annotation. enable discovery client annotation. This is step number 2. And of course, as step number 3, you will configure your app in your application.yml. You'll provide the details of the Spring application and which is your Eureka server, to which you are going to register, and you will also provide your Eureka instance details, right? So these are the configurations that you need to provide. And once you provide all these and your microservice is up, you all know that it registers with the with the Eureka server, and any further communication that happens between one microservice and another microservice, the microservices will take help of the Eureka server to discover the details of the other microservice instance, and from that instance it will be able to get the URI, and from there it will be able to make the further calls. And which is the object that will help one microservice to interact with another microservice? That is nothing but your discovery client object, right? So you'll have to create an object of discovery client, and then using discovery client, get instances method can be used to get the instances of that other microservice that you want to talk to. And from the list of instances, you can get one instance and then get the URI from there. And once you get the basic URI, you can add additional endpoints to it. Then finally make your call, either using REST template or any other mechanism, isn't it? All of you remember this? Yes, great. So what we'll do now is, based on whatever we have understood in yesterday's session, we will attempt a small quiz, and then we can move on to today's deliverables. Yeah. So here are some questions that I've jotted down. Please come, let's start answering these questions one by one. So you can start with question number 0 on top. The set of services and solutions for solving general distributed application challenges provided by Netflix and open to the broader open source community is called what? Netflix OSS is the correct answer. Okay. There are more than 70 people attending this training. And yesterday also we have discussed about all these. But I'm getting only 5 or 10 correct answers. Why is that? Didn't we discuss about all these things yesterday? Yeah. The correct answer is Netflix OSS, isn't it? Yeah. So question number 1, please. Which framework acts as an extra layer over your Spring Boot and behaves as a wrapper around your Netflix OSS and helps us to create applications and use projects suitable for cloud? Correct. Spring Cloud is the correct answer. Perfect. That's the correct answer. Yeah. Question number 2, please. Question number 2. Which project of or which product of Netflix provides service registry and service discovery features? Correct. Eureka, right? Eureka provides the service registry and discovery features. Perfect. Question number 3, please. Which project of Netflix provides client-side load balancing? And in the latest versions, what is the alternative available from Spring Cloud? Correct. The project of Netflix that provides client-side load balancing is Ribbon, right? But we know that Ribbon is no more supported in the latest versions of Spring Boot. So if you're using Spring Boot 2.4.m1 onwards, that support is not available. So what is the alternative? Correct. Spring Cloud Load Balance, isn't it? Perfect. Question number 4, please. Which project of Netflix provides fault tolerance and circuit breaker facilities? Correct. Hystrix, right? Hystrix provides the fault tolerance and circuit breaker facilities. This product is from Netflix. But we all know that Hystrix also is no more supported in latest versions of Spring Boot and cloud combination, right? So what is an alternative for a circuit breaker in Spring Cloud? Correct. Resilience 4J. Right? Resilience 4J is the alternative available. Yeah. Question number 5, please. How do you ensure Spring Cloud dependencies and starter modules are available to your Spring Boot app? What changes you might have to do to pom.xml? Correct. You have to add a section called dependency management. And in the dependency management, you have to provide the details of Spring Cloud, what artifact you need, what is the version of Spring Cloud, and etc. Right? So what kind of scope is it? All that you have to specify. Right? Perfect. Question number 6, please. If you need to mark a Spring Boot application to behave like a Eureka server, what annotation should you use on the main application class? Correct. @enable Eureka server. Right? @enable Eureka server. Perfect. Question number 7, please. If you need your microservices to behave as a Eureka client, what annotation should you use on the main application class? Correct. @enable discovery client. Yeah. @enable discovery client. Yeah. Perfect. And question number 8, please. Probably the last question for our quiz. Yeah. Once the microservices are registered as Eureka clients, one microservice can retrieve the reference and URI of the other microservice that it needs to communicate to and make requests by using the dash object. Probably I will make a little change here. Okay. It needs to communicate with. Okay. Retrieve the reference. Okay. Retrieve the reference and URI of the other microservice that it needs to communicate with. Okay. If I remove it, what is by using the dash object? Correct. The discovery client object, right? It needs a discovery client object. Using the discovery client object, it can call the method called get instances. And then once you get the instances, from that instance, you can get the URI. And once the URI is available, you can then use REST template, etc. to make the actual call. Is it? Yeah. Team, are you all with me? Great. Thanks for attempting this quiz. And now let's move on to our demo. Yeah. So by yesterday, we have already created the Eureka server. So no changes I've made to the Eureka server. There is one additional configuration I've added to Eureka server. I will talk about that later. For now, let me just run this Eureka server. Let's watch the console. So you can see that Tomcat has been initialized to run on port 8761. I'm just waiting for the startup procedure to complete. There it is. So you can see that your app has started and it's available on port 8761. Now, if I just go back to the browser and look at 8761, you should be able to see the Eureka dashboard, right? And now you can see that in the Eureka dashboard, you can see that DS replicas have been is empty because I don't have any discovery server replica or siblings. Plus, there are no instances currently registered with Eureka as of now, right? So it is empty. Yeah. Now, so till here we had already completed in yesterday's session, right? So let us continue now and look at what configurations we have done on the microservice level so that they behave as a Eureka client. Yeah. So first we will talk about the Cafe Info microservice, and then we will talk about Cafe Review microservice. Now, to help you understand how stage by stage we have been building our apps, I have created a different version of the same app. Guys, you remember we have already created the Cafe Info Cafe Info and Cafe Review apps already. And I have already shared that on the MS team for all of you, right? But in that case, they were pure simple microservices, and one microservice was talking to the other microservice just by directly using the URI and REST template, right? That's a very simple scenario. Now, continuing with that same scenario, the next scenario that we are trying is how you can set up Eureka server and Eureka client. Yeah. So I did not want to disturb the existing program, because for you also understanding the existing program and the changes might become a little difficult. So what I've done is, whenever I make elaborate changes, I would have created two separate projects. So you can see here, Cafe Info 1 and Cafe Review 1 are the two projects that I've created. Of course, functionality wise, it is the same. But the only difference here is I have configured them to behave as a Eureka client. Okay. So I will share these projects also once I complete the discussions today. So come, let's look at the Cafe Info 1. Functionality wise, it is going to be the same. Whatever functionalities we have discussed. Okay. You all remember this, right? You all remember these two microservices, right? What is Cafe Info doing? What is Cafe Review doing? And what functionalities are there in Cafe Info? What functionalities are there in Cafe Review? Yeah, functionality wise, absolutely the same. Only thing is, now I have configured them to behave as a Eureka client. So let's look at how it's been done. So step number 1, as all of us know, if you want your microservice to behave as a Eureka client, can you tell me what is step number 1, please? Correct. We have to add the appropriate dependency in the pom.xml file, right? So I'm showing you the pom.xml file of Cafe Info project. Yeah. So things are the same almost, but wherever there's a change, we'll have a look. Yeah. So initial things are the same. You can see that Spring Boot is still my parent, and these are the general details about my project. I am using Java version 1.8. And since I need to add the dependency for Eureka client, and Eureka client related starter modules available from Spring Cloud version also is mentioned as a property here. Plus, if you look at the regular dependencies, this is a microservice, right? This is a regular Spring Boot app. So required dependencies are available, like actuator, because I'm talking to the database using Spring Data JPA, that dependency. I'm using H2 database, so that is there. It's a web application. I'm using time leaf based views, so that dependency is there. Okay. Apart from these, you will see one extra dependency, which is Eureka client. Okay. Now you need not worry about this dependency for OpenFeed. I'm not using it, so let me just remove it. Not a problem. Or let me comment it off. Okay. I'll talk about OpenFeed tomorrow when I'm talking about the load balancer. So this is not required for now. Okay. So apart from these regular dependencies, only extra dependency that you can see here is the dependency for Eureka client. So are you all comfortable with line number 45 to line number 48, please? Yes, right. So this is the dependency. Now, of course, though I did not explicitly ask, you also have the test dependency. Plus, are you all comfortable from line number 72 to 82? Like yesterday when we were discussing Eureka server, also same thing was there, right? So you can see that there is a dependency management entry where I have mentioned the dependency for Spring Cloud and the artifact ID is Spring Cloud dependencies. And this is the version of it. And these are the scopes. Yeah, this is required because I need to see my parent is still going to be Spring Boot, but I need to use certain starter modules from Spring Cloud. So I need to use Spring Cloud as an extra layer of framework over and above your Spring Boot, right? So that's why I've made this. And of course, this dependency provides me the starter modules for Eureka client, because you can see here group ID org spring framework.cloud, right? So this is step number 1, add the dependency for Eureka client. Yeah. Once this is ready, what is step number 2? Yeah. Let's look at the main application class, please. One minute. The fiend import is showing an error. I am not using anyway. Okay, have a look. So this is my main client, my main application. Are you all able to see any addition here? Because I want this microservice to behave as a Eureka client. Which line number is new? Correct, line number 13, right? So rest of the things are the same. But since I want this app to behave as a Eureka client, I have to enable or use this annotation called enable discovery client. So that's what I have already done. Yeah. Plus, once this is ready, now we will have a look at the main application.yml file. Yeah. Now your application.yml file already contains certain properties of the regular microservice. Yeah. I want you to look at from line number 4 to line number 16, please, all of you. From line number 4 to line number 16. Go through it and tell me. This was already there in the initial microservice itself, isn't it? Yeah. Are you all comfortable from line number 4 to line number 16, please? Yes, all my data source and my database related configurations. Okay, all these things are there, right? Plus, I want you to look at this from line number 18, please. Again, the main property here is Spring. Under the main property called Spring, I have this property available called application name. Yeah, so I want you to just very carefully look at it. Are you all comfortable from line number 18 to line number 27, all of you? Yesterday we have discussed about this. Yes, right? So in my example, what is the Spring application name? We all know that when a microservice behaves as a Eureka client, you have to give a application name so that every app is identified uniquely, right? So in my case, correct. Cafe Info Service is the Spring application name. So Spring is the main property, then application name. Then this is my Eureka server to whom I am registering with. Plus, when I register with Eureka server, I become an instance of the Eureka client. So what is the instance ID? This is the pattern that it has to use to register with the instance ID. So it will take the Spring application name, which is this. Plus after that, it will put a random value, right? So this is something that we have done till now. Plus, look at the last set from line number 29 to 33. Immediately, we need not discuss about it, but I want you to look at it. Nothing great. From line number 29 to line number 33, I'm just maintaining some general properties. See, in your app, if you want to store some global properties that needs to be used in anywhere in your application. For example, you might want to inject this property in your controller or service or anywhere in your app. one common place to keep such properties, one very good place to keep such properties is in your application.yml. Yeah. So in typical web applications, you remember we can store some properties in the web.xml file, guys. And whatever properties you store in web.xml file, that is available to the entire context or the entire app. Very similar to that here also. Assume that certain properties are required for you to be used in your entire app. So one very easily accessible common place is the application.yml. So you can see here, nothing great. I've stored two properties. What are those two properties? pivotal.cafeinfoservice.name. I'm only storing the name of the service, which is cafe info service. Similarly, pivotal.cafe-review-service.name. What is the name of the review service? Nothing great. I'm just storing two properties where I'm storing the name of myself here. Plus, I'm storing the name of another microservice that I want to talk. So in my example, there are only two microservices. So I've just created two properties and stored their actual names. Yeah. See, pivotal.cafeinfoservice.name. The value is cafe info service. Similarly, pivotal.cafe-review-service.name is cafe review service. Guys, are you all with me? Yeah. But how will we access this? Okay. How can you access this? All that we will see a little later. But for now, I want you to know that in application.yml, we have stored these properties. Are you all with me, guys? Okay. And now if you just, almost everything is done, but I want you to look at line number 1 and 2. This is my microservice, right? Earlier, for my microservice, I had hard-coded the port numbers, right? Cafe info was running on port number 8095 and cafe review was running on port number 8096. You all remember it? Yes. But now, slight change is required because assuming that we are planning to use or we are configuring these microservices to behave as Eureka client, and maybe in future we might even deploy all these things on the cloud. Yeah. So when you are going to deploy your apps on the cloud, is it a good idea to hard code all your port numbers, guys? On the cloud? Not really, right? You need to give flexibility so that your apps, yeah, can run on any available random port. That's a very good production idea. So look at what I've done, how I've enabled it. For using the server.port property, instead of giving a specific port number, you can set the server port value to 0. When I'm setting the server port value to 0, it does not mean that I'm setting the value of the port to 0. The meaning of setting the server port to 0 is you are giving it the liberty to run and take up any random available port. So when your app runs, automatically it will pick up any random available port. Guys, are you all with me? Yeah. So this is a good idea. Set the server port value to 0 because anyway you are using Eureka server. Once these guys are up, they are anyway going to register with the Eureka server, and you are not going to directly, you need not remember the URLs and the port numbers because anyway you are discovering the other microservice through Eureka server. So it's best to set the port number as 0 so that it can pick up a random port. Team, are you all with me? So till now, 3 steps are completed. Step number 1, we have added the Eureka client dependency. Step number 2, we have added the @enable discovery client annotation on your main class. Step number 3, we have applied appropriate properties in application.yml file so that it behaves as a Eureka client, right? Now, once this is ready, finally what we can do is we'll have to go back to our service class because earlier in our service class, we had hard coded the other microservice URL, and using that URL, we were using REST template and talking to it. But now, since we are Eureka clients, I will use the discovery client object, and using the discovery client object, we will use the get instances method and get the instance of the other microservice, and that's how we are going to talk. So rest of the code will remain the same. Your controller, model, everything is the same. Only changes in your service class. Okay, let me go to the service class. The only change that is required here is in your get all method. Okay, so rest of the code is the same, no change at all. Now I want you to look at the change here, please. Yeah. So before I talk about it, have a look. First and foremost, can you tell me, are you all comfortable with line number 50 and 51? Line number 50 and 51. Yes, right? This is the heart and soul of our program. So if one microservice wants to communicate with another microservice, it has to first discover the instance of the other microservice from the Eureka server. So to do that, I will require an object of type discovery client. So once you have added the appropriate dependency, you can auto wire for this object of type discovery client. So that's it. Once you have this, you can make your calls. Meanwhile, here you can see I have one variable that I've created here. Okay, a string variable called cafe review service. Any name you can give, it's after all a string variable. Here my intention is to store the name of the service that I'm going to talk to. So this is cafe info service. So from cafe info service, we are planning to talk to cafe review service. So I want to store the name of the cafe review service. But instead of hard coding it here and storing it, look at what I do. Right in front of the string variable, I am using an annotation called @value, and using this expression pattern, I am saying using @value, I'm using this expression saying, go get the value for this property. So evaluate this property and get the value of that property and inject that into this variable. Yeah. So what is this? Dollar within curly braces, pivotal.cafe-review.name. Where did you see this property mentioned, guys? Did you see this property mentioned anywhere? Correct, in my application.yml file. So in my application.yml file, I'm saying, go access this property called pivotal.cafe-review-service.name. So whatever is the value, what is the value? Cafe review -service. So this value will get injected into this variable. So this is the best place. Instead of hard coding it in your code, because any changes later to your code, it requires redeployment, rebuilding. But instead, you can store your properties in a configurational file, and you can pick up those values anytime you want and inject it in your programs anywhere you want by using @value. Guys, are you all with me? And so keep this ready. And once this is ready, rest of the code is the same. You all remember that what should get all method do? First, it has to create a model and view object. Then inside the model and view object, first it has to put the cafe info details. So it is adding an object with the property name called cafe info. And here it will put all the cafe info. But to put the cafe review details, earlier, how did we do? Earlier, if you all recollect, look at line number 74. Earlier, you kept your URI ready like this, right? Then you used the REST template, and then you retrieve the value, and then finally you put that into model and view object, and finally you have returned, isn't it? Earlier, that is what you did. But now, instead of using this way where you are manually creating your URI, look at what I'm doing. Are you all comfortable from line number 64 to line number 65, please? Did we discuss this in our slide? Right. So using discovery client, I'm saying get instances of what? cafe review service. So cafe review service is the variable which contains the actual name of the cafe review service. And this will get all the instances of cafe review service, and that instances will be available in a list. Now, of course, if only one is running, one instance would be available. And from the list called instances, I say get 0. This will give me the first instance. And from that first instance, I am getting the URI. So URI is ready, but URI is pointing to only the main URI of cafe review. So first I'm printing that in my system out just to be sure. And then to that URI, I'm converting it into a string. And then look at what I'm doing. I am adding get review plus whatever cafe ID, isn't it? Yeah. So assuming that your URI looks like this, I'm just taking an example. For review service, assuming that the URI is like this. Yeah. So maybe it's running on some port, some host and some random port like this. From here to this, you are adding get review. So this will be your URI, right? But using this URI, you have to generate the entire final URL on which you are going to make a call, right? So to the existing URL, which is this, you are adding, look at line number 69, you are adding get review, and using get review, you are also adding your ID, cafe ID. So whatever is the cafe ID that the user has entered, that is one assume. So this is how your final URL is ready. Team, are you all with me? So once your URL is ready, I'm just printing it just to be sure. And then finally, rest of the code remains the same. See, I'm still using REST template and using get for object. I'm passing the URI and the response will be received as a list object and list type. And that is what I'm storing here. And then finally, it is only for my printing. Finally, I'm populating that into my model and view, and I'm setting the view name. Guys, are you all with me, please? So only difference here is because now it is a microservice, and from one microservice, which is also acting as a Eureka client, from one microservice, if you need to talk to another microservice, first using discovery client, auto wire for an object of type discovery client. Then using discovery client, you can get instances of that other microservice where you are calling it by its name. And then once you get the instances, get the URI. Once you get the URI, you generate your URL, final URL. Then you'll still use your REST template to make your calls. Team, are you all with me, please? So this also is ready. Similarly, I have made the changes in cafe review 1. But in our example, cafe info is talking to cafe review. But is cafe review talking to cafe info, guys? No, right? But in case it was talking, same thing, you have to do it here. Yeah. So this cafe review 1 also, no other changes, but this has been configured to behave as a Eureka client. So let us quickly check this also. Form.xml. Apart from all the others. Don't worry, I've added dependency for resilience 4J also, but that is not required for now. You can see that Eureka client has got added, right? Rest of the things are the same, no change at all. Yeah. And of course, because it needs to behave as a Eureka client, you also have to add the appropriate annotation called @enable discovery client. Team, are you all with me? That's all. Okay. These are the only two things. And of course, your XML, of course, your application.yml, sorry. Here also, I have ensured that this microservice also runs on a random port. Rest of it is the database related properties. And this also, application name. This also will register with our Eureka. And here also I'm storing this property. Actually, these properties are not useful here because this microservice is not talking to any other microservice. Yeah. And in this app, should I use discovery client anywhere, guys? In this app? No need, right? Because I am not talking to any other microservice, right? If I was talking to any other microservice, obviously I also need to use discovery client, but it's actually not required in this scenario. Team, are you all with me, please? So that's it. We are almost ready. And now that your Eureka server is up, yeah, what we'll do now is we will run our cafe info one. Yeah. So once this is ready, I'll go to the main application and let me run this. So we'll closely watch the console for cafe info. Keep watching. Look at what port it picks up, okay? So you can see that Tomcat initialized with port 0. That means there's a leniency to pick up any random port. But finally, we will see what port it picks. Some random port it should pick. Can you see a port that it has picked up? Port number 65409, right? 65409. So I have not given this port number anywhere. Yeah, this is a random port that it has picked. Okay. And now once this is up, yes, this is up. Now if you go back and kind of refresh your Eureka, do you see any changes, all of you? Yes, right. So under instances currently registered with Eureka, you can see that it is one instance has registered. So you can see that the application name is cafe info -service. This is the Spring application name that you have used. So it will register with that name. And this is the instance ID. Yeah. So you have given here in the instance ID. What is the instance ID? To pick up the application name, then colon, then put a random value, right? So you can see here, picked up the application name, cafe info -service, and colon, some random value, isn't it? Yeah, so this thing. And you can also see that at present, can you see what is the status of this instance? Up, isn't it? Yeah, the status is showing as up. Now, similarly, at present, I have only one instance, right? This is the only one instance that I have. Yeah. Similarly, I can now run the cafe review also. Yeah. So for this also, it is almost the same. This should also pick up a random port number. You can see it is picked up 0. That means its random port number can be picked. After some time, you will see that it would have picked a random port number. So you can see here also, you can say 65475. That's the port number that it has picked up. And you all remember I was talking to you about when the microservices register with Eureka server. It's not that, okay, one-time registration and till lifelong, those instances will be shown there. You remember I mentioned something about a heartbeat, a kind of ping that is kept on being sent from the client to the server. That's how the Eureka server still knows that you are still alive, right? The instances are still alive. So every heartbeat, one heartbeat will go every 30 seconds. Can you see here? That's the default thing. Yeah. So starting heartbeat executor, which will keep sending the heartbeat to the server every 30 seconds. Yeah. And there are other properties also here, and all these properties can be reconfigured. Okay, all these properties can be reconfigured. I'm going to share with you one article that's available on the internet. That's a very good article if you really want to play around and reconfigure these renewal, eviction, and other lease period values. If you want to configure according to your need, how can you do that? What properties are available? This is a very nice, very easily understandable article. I will suggest one article which you can go to. Team, are you all with me? Now, so this also is ready. So once if I go back here and refresh, you'll be able to see that both the services are available now. Yeah. So Cafe Info service also is available. Cafe Review service also is available. Yeah. Now to access it and see whether your entire functionality is working fine or not, you can just click on this. This is the instance ID, right? Just click on it. But when you click on it, you can see that automatically, look at what it has done. By default, when you run it, you can see that it is automatically picked up the full computer name as my host name. This is my full computer name, and this is my port number. And by default, it is showing actuator/info. Are you all with me, guys? Yeah. And you can also see, let me go to the beginning. You can also see it is HTTPS. It is trying to access it using HTTPS. And because I'm using a Wipro laptop and there are security settings, you can see that by default, it does not provide you this secure connection. So I'll try one thing. Let me, instead of HTTPS, let me try HTTP. Yeah. It's still failing. Yeah. Instead of HTTP, instead of this host name, okay, I will just try to use localhost because it's taken the full computer name. So that might not really work. So I'm just changing it to localhost 65409 and then I will access it. Yeah. Now you can see that it is working, but actuator/info, I have not given any information, right? So you can see that this endpoint is not enabled. So you can see that 404 error is there. Not a problem. I'll just remove this actuator info. So now if I access, does this screen look familiar? This is Cafe Info screen, right? So this is the default behavior, guys, because by default, when you use it, by default, it will automatically take the host name. It will take like this. Let me show it to you. This is my thing, right? So if I just go to my PC, I just go to the properties, my PC. Can you all see my full computer name here, guys? This is what it has taken. So by default, what it will do is, it will, whenever it generates that instance ID, when you click on it, it will automatically take a HTTPS schema. Then it will put my whatever, okay, .wipro.com. This is my full computer name. Then that random port, whatever. Then you are able to, by default, it will put actuator/info. So what I'm going to do is, I've just replaced it. I've just taken HTTP because it's throwing error in Wipro context. So this entire computer name, I've just taken it as localhost. This I've retained. And then actuator/info, because I've not configured, I will ignore this also. So this, I'm just replacing it with this. Guys, are you all with me? And there is also one more property that you can use. So for example, if you go to Eureka server, in the Eureka server in application.yml, in application.yml file, here you can use one more property saying, not here, okay. In the client, okay, in the client whenever I'm registering. So the client is registering here, right? So under this Eureka instance property, there is one more property available called prefer IP address. So instead of registering itself with the full computer name and etc., if you want your microservices to register with IP address, there is a property available where you can say prefer IP address and you can set it to true. Okay, that property also you can use. But I have not used that property. That is why you can see that it's automatically taken in this format. And due to security on Wipro machines, it will not allow me to access it like this. So instead of HTTPS, I've replaced it with this and then localhost and then the port. Team, are you all with me, please? Yeah. Maybe tomorrow when I show you, I will show you using preferably IP address. Okay, that will be easy. So now the funda is the same. So this is my cafe. So let me add a cafe. Cafe name is Nilgiris and I'll say this is a cake shop and I'll submit. Now I'll be able to see all my details of the cafes. Yeah, I'll go back to Eureka. I will go to the review service now. Let me add some reviews. Yeah, see again the same issue. Again, I'll go back and change it. This is my review. All of you remember, right? So for Cafe ID 1, which is Nilgiris, I'm going to give some rating. I'm going to give 5 rating and I'll say fabulous cakes. Yeah, and I click on sub. So this is one review that I've added. I can add another review if required. So add one more review to the same cafe. I'll say maybe 3 and I will say average ambience. Then I click on sub. So 2 reviews are available at present. Yeah. So one review and another review. Team, are you all with me? Yes. Now, if I go back to my cafe info, yeah, using cafe info, now I will call get all method and I will pass the cafe ID as one. Yeah. So when I do this, should be able to get this output. So is it working fine? Is one microservice able to talk to another microservice and fetch the data and make it available? Absolutely yes. Is it? Yeah. So you can see that this data is available from the same microservice, but the review and ratings data is coming from the other microservice and it's beautifully worked. Team, are you all with me? Yes. So this is how you can set up one Eureka server. And in my example, I've just set up 2 microservices, which is Cafe Info and Cafe Review. Are you all with me, please? Right? But here in our case, how many Eureka servers are there, guys? In our case, how many Eureka servers are there? Correct. Only one Eureka server is there, right? And if, okay, only one Eureka server is there. And if one Eureka server goes down, yeah, assume that this Eureka server shuts down or some issues, it's not able to access. Do you think intercommunication between these microservices should be possible? No, isn't it? Yeah. So instead of having one Eureka server, which could be a potential single point of failure kind of scenario, it's always better to have a setup where you have multiple Eureka servers working in a kind of replicated sibling mode. Isn't it, guys? Before I show you that, let me show you one more thing here. So at present, you can see that there are 2 services, right? Cafe Info service and Cafe Review service. Yeah. Now what I'm going to do here is, Let me go to the cafe info. So this is cafe info project. I will stop it. Yeah, I will terminate this app. Yeah. Similarly, I will also go to cafe review application and I will terminate this app. Yeah. Now, when I terminate this app, it's not that immediately you will see that it will stop these details. Can you still see that though the app is stopped, can you still see that your Eureka is still showing these to be up? Yeah, because there is a concept of heartbeat, and we know that every 30 seconds it receives a heartbeat. But if it does not receive a heartbeat for 30 seconds, every 30 seconds, there is an internal waiting period. So it waits for some time, thinking maybe it has some issue. So maybe it will recover. So let me wait for some time. And that time, that waiting time also is around 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes. Again, that also is configurable. Yeah. In some cases, in the latest versions, that lease period expiry will work, or it will not evict these until around 4 minutes. Okay. So it will keep waiting, thinking that it is up. Yeah. And if it is not able to work, then only it will evict. So it will keep waiting. Meanwhile, assume I click on any one of these. Yeah. But it is not working. See, it's not working at all, right? And even this also is not working because it's still not up. Yeah, it's down. So it cannot be reached at all. Yeah. Now, if I come back and refresh Eureka, can you still see? Though I have accessed it and it knows that you were not able to access, still it is showing as up. Can you see this, guys? Because it is still in the waiting mode. Yeah. So we will probably wait for another 2 or 3 minutes because we have seen that broadly around 4 minutes it will wait. Okay, in the latest version. So after that, it will realize that, okay, these guys are still not there. Then it will evict them from here. Okay, so we will come back and look at it after maybe 2 or 3 more minutes. Team, are you all with me? Yes. And meanwhile, later we will shut down this Eureka server also. And then we can start the Eureka server probably in a multiple Eureka server mode. Okay. All that we can do. Yeah. But guys, to demonstrate that multiple Eureka server kind of setup or a kind of application, it will be a little difficult for me because how many laptops do I have now for this training? Only one laptop, right? In fact, if we were in a classroom kind of session, at least in a classroom session, we have machines there, right? So we could have taken 3 physical machines to act as a Eureka server, 3 separate Eureka servers, right? So one we can consider it as Eureka primary. Next one we can consider it as Eureka secondary. And the third one we can consider as Eureka tertiary. All that we could have done. But unfortunately, I have access to only one laptop and I want one single laptop to logically behave as 3 different machines. It is actually the same machine. But for this Eureka demonstration to work, I am going to simulate as though the same single machine is going to act as 3 separate machines. So how am I going to do that? Yeah. What kind of configurations you have to do on the system? Then what kind of configuration you might have to do on your Eureka server and the Eureka client per se? All that is what we will discuss next. Yeah. Team, are you all with me? Yeah. Meanwhile, yeah, see, now I'm refreshing. Did you see that around after 2 minutes, it was around 58, 57, 58. And now if I refresh, now are you able to see that it realized that those instances are no more alive and then it has evicted them from here or deregistered them? Are you able to see? Now it does not show any instances. So remember that, please. It takes a little while to do that. And all those values are configurable. As I told you, I will share with you one article. I want all of you to read that article once today's training is over, just for your understanding. Yeah? Now what I'm going to do is I'll go back here, and even the Eureka server also. This is a Eureka server, right? I'll check the Eureka server. That also I will terminate. Because now we are going to run Eureka server in a replicated multi-server mode. Yeah. Now let me refresh. You can see that Eureka server is not reachable now. Team, are you all with me? So before I demonstrate the multiple Eureka server, let me roughly tell you what I'm planning to do. As I told you, we will be using one single laptop, right? Mine is one single laptop. So my one single laptop already has by default, it will be called as localhost, right? Localhost. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to configure my machine in such a way that same machine, okay, same machine pointing to the same address. For example, I'm sure many of you, basic networking, you will be aware. There is a loopback address that points to your own machine. So the loopback address, IP address is always 127.0.0.1. So this IP address always points to your current local machine. Yeah. So what I can do is I can go to a configurational file, and in that configurational file, I can ensure that the same machine will be called as Eureka primary, and the same machine will be called as Eureka secondary, and the same machine will be called as Eureka tertiary. But only to differentiate them, the host names are different, but physically they are using the same machine. But logically, I have given different host names so that it looks like as though it is different Eureka servers. Yeah. And of course, for our easy understanding, we will be running this on port 5002. This is a Eureka server which is running on port 5002. This will run on port 5003. And this will run on port 5004. Team, are you all with me, please? So this configuration I have to do on my system. This is nothing related to our microservice, but the system wise, this configuration I'll have to do. And once this is ready, then we can configure our Eureka server programs to run in a replicated sibling mode. But where do I do this configuration? Let me show that to you. Correct. On your machine. Okay. If you need not be a system admin for this. But of course, if you have a little system admin knowledge, it will be easy for you. Very similar to if you are working on Unix. In Unix, you will have a file called etc hosts. Yeah. etc host file. Under etc, you will have a host file. Very similarly, even if you are using Windows, you will have a file called as host file. I'll show you the path. Okay. Usually it will be under C:, Windows, system 32, drivers, okay, 1 minute, drivers, etc, and here, okay. So this is the path. Usually I'm copying this path in your chat window. Just for, okay. If you're using Windows, this is the folder. So under C:, Windows, system 32 drivers, etc folder, you'll have one file called hosts file. Please note this host file is an admin file. It might not, if you are using a Wipro laptop, this might require admin privileges. It might not allow you to change this host file if you don't have admin privileges. So please raise a helpline call. Take the help of the helpline team itself to get this configuration added. Okay. If they are not ready to give you admin privilege, ask them only to add this and give it to you. Okay. When I also don't have admin privilege on my laptop, but when I had admin privilege, I have updated this. I'll show you. Of course, if you're trying all these things on your personal machine, of course, you have all the rights. But if you are doing it on official laptop, you might really not have admin privilege. So here in the etc host file, can you see line number 24 to 27? Line number 27 will be usually there already. But any guesses? What am I doing here in line number 24 to 27, please? Same loopback address, which is pointing to my same current machine. Same machine will be known with the host name called localhost. Same current machine will be known with the host name called Eureka tertiary and Eureka secondary and Eureka primary. So whether you use Eureka primary, secondary, tertiary or localhost, logically inside, they will all be pointing to the same physical machine, which is the current machine. Team, are you all with me? Yeah. So this is the entry that you have to make. So if you don't have admin privileges to make changes to the host file, this is the entry that you have to make so that further when we configure our Eureka servers need to run on different machines. So how am I simulating? Like this. Yeah. Team, are you all with me, please? Yeah. This is mandatory because your Eureka server will not run in multiple server mode if you are using the same host name. It will think that you are using the same machine. So what is the fun in using replicated servers? So you have to do this activity. Are all of you with me? Yeah, I will also share one sample this code, okay, in the host file. Okay, roughly this is how it should be, and the path should be for the host file. The path is this. Update about in the host file under the path. So get this help from the helpline team in case you require. Yeah. So once this is ready, then we will be able to configure your Eureka server to run in a replicated server mode. Team, are you all with me, please? So this is the logical place where we can take a break, because once we come back, we will run our Eureka server in a replicated multiple server mode. Okay. So we will take a break and come back. And once we come back, we can resume. Welcome back. Before the break, we have already discussed both the microservices, which we configured to behave as a Eureka client. And we ran them and we saw how the entire stuff works, right? Now, we also realized that, in a training session like ours, having one single Eureka server just for testing purpose, that's fine. But imagine having one single Eureka server in a production environment. That becomes a single point of failure, right? So it's always better that in a production environment, we run multiple Eureka servers. So just before the break, we decided that since I have access to only my laptop, I have configured my laptop's host file to behave. One single laptop or one single machine is going to now behave as 3 separate physical systems, right? Because I've given a different host name to it. So using that concept, let's look at how I can spin up multiple Eureka servers. So what I'm going to do is, we have stopped all these apps. If you recollect, we have stopped all the apps. Now let me go back to Eureka server. Yep. In the Eureka server, let me go to the application.yml file. Yep. Don't worry about this property here. I've added one property here called server enable self-preservation to false. As I told you a little earlier, today I'm going to suggest you to read one article which talks a little more on the renewal, eviction, and lease policies that are used in Eureka and some properties that you could use to configure them. So when you read that, you will probably understand the meaning of why this might be required. Okay. So for now, you can ignore it. But coming back to the main point of discussion. If you recollect in our discussion yesterday also, when I was showing you the Eureka server code, which is this application.yml of Eureka server, we can create multiple groups of configurational properties in a YAML file. And how do we divide them? We can have multiple set of properties and we can divide each of these set of properties by using 3 hyphens, isn't it, guys? Yeah, 3 hyphens can be used to divide them. Fine. I have divided all these. So this looks as though this is one set of configuration. Then there is 3 hyphens. Then this is one set of configuration. Then again, there is 3 hyphens and there is one more set and there is one more set of configuration here. Yeah. Here, what I'm trying to do is, since I have only one machine, I need to run my Eureka server in a replicated sibling mode. So how do I do it? Before I show you how you can do it, you remember yesterday when we were discussing, look at the first set of configurational properties here. Have I given any name to this set of configurational properties? Just to identify this entire set, I have not given any name, right? So yesterday we were discussing, if I don't give any name to a set of configurational properties, it will be considered under what name? What is the name for this kind of configuration? Correct. It's called as default, right? So it's like you're running this in a default profile, right? So it will take as the default. But now I don't want to run this app as per default profile, because if I run it according to this default profile, there'll be only one Eureka server and it will not have any other siblings. But I want to run this in a mode, in a replicated sibling mode. So look at what I've done here. Let this be there, but I'm not going to use this configuration. If you scroll down, look at the lines from 15 to 30. We have already discussed this yesterday. Even today also in the beginning of our session today, we have discussed about this configuration. Hopefully all of you remember. Yeah, just go through it, then we'll have a discussion. Go through from line number 15 to line number 30, please, all of you. Have I given a name to this set of profile properties, or to this set of properties? Have I given a name? Yes, right? What is the name that I've given to this? Correct. Eureka 1, right? So for this entire set, you can see here by using one property called spring.profiles, I've given a name called Eureka 1. So for this entire set, the name is Eureka 1. So if I run this particular app, so when I run this app, if I run this app and set Eureka 1 as my active profile, okay, I repeat, if I run this app and while running this app, if I choose my active profile as Eureka 1 and I want my app to run as per active profile Eureka 1, on which host name will your Eureka server start? Correct. It will start on Eureka primary. Yeah. And it will start listening on which port number? Correct. It will start listening on port number 5002. And Eureka primary server, which is listening on port 5002, does it have any other siblings, or will it have any other siblings? Yes. How many? 2 of them, right? Who are the siblings of Eureka primary? Eureka secondary, Eureka server running on Eureka secondary, listening on port 5003, and Eureka tertiary, which is listening on port 5004, right? These are the 2 siblings, right? So if I run my profile, or if I run my app as per this profile, this is how it will run. Yeah. But physically, if you were doing it in a physical production environment, each of these will be 3 different machines. Yeah. This will be in a different app, preferably running on a different machine. This will be on a different app. This will be on a different app running on a different machine. But in my case, since I don't have access to multiple machines and I want to simulate how you can run multiple Eureka servers, I am keeping all the configuration in one single app itself, right? So this is one configuration that I have created exactly on the same lines. Yeah, very similar to this, exactly on the same lines. Here is one more set of configuration. Yeah, go through from line number 32 to 47, please. Are you able to realize that for this set of configuration, I've given the name as Eureka 2? And if I run my app as per Eureka 2 configuration, the Eureka server will start on Eureka secondary machine and it will start listening on port 5003. And for Eureka secondary, Eureka primary and Eureka tertiary will be the siblings. Are you able to make out, guys? Similarly, on the same lines, can you guess the last set of configuration that I have below? What will be that configuration of? Correct. That will be for Eureka tertiary, isn't it? So let me scroll down. Have a look at line number 49 to 64, please, all of you. Are you all comfortable with this? Yes, is it? Yeah. Please note, just because we are on the day 5, that does not mean that initial training rules has changed. The initial training instructions holds good even now. Any doubts, please make a note. Right after this demo, once I finish this entire demo, I will open up the forum for Q&A and we can address your doubts. Is that okay, all of you? So once this is ready, so this is the only change I've done. Yeah. In fact, this was already there, but when we were running this app, we were not running as per a particular configuration. We were running the app directly, so it picked up the default configuration. And according to the default configuration, it was running in a single Eureka server mode, isn't it? Yeah. So now if I want to run it in a multiple server mode, look at what I'm going to do. Yeah. Now, for example, once it is ready, if I run this app, so if I just go to this app here, and if I just run it and I say run application, because you are not choosing which is your active profile, automatically it will pick up default profile and it will run the app, and only one Eureka server will be created in a non-sibling mode. But because now I want to run it as per a particular profile, what I'm going to do is I will right click on this app. This is my Eureka server, right? And this is my application.yml where I had all these configuration. So look at what I do. I right click on this app and in the run as menu, can you see the last option called run configuration, all of you? Yeah. So just go to run configuration. In run configuration menu, in this, it will show you all your projects. So in this, very carefully select your Eureka server application. Many a time, see, though I have right clicked on this Eureka server and I'm going to the properties. Okay, sorry. I'm right clicking on this Eureka server and I'm going to say run as run configuration. Here you can see that it is not choosing the Eureka server app. So be careful here. You just choose your correct app. So Eureka server app, choose your Eureka server application. And in Eureka server application, under these configurational properties, just go to the second tab called arguments. And here under VM arguments, you can enter this, okay? -D to add an argument. And here you can say spring.profiles.active and you will set it as Eureka 1. What am I doing here? By using one VM argument property called -d, spring.profiles.active, I'm setting when the application runs now, when I'm running now, it should run according to this argument. So what is the active profile I'm setting? It should run according to Eureka 1. Yeah. So because I'm running according to the profile called Eureka 1, just set this like this and now click on run. Yeah. When you click on run, let's watch the console. So it should run according to the Eureka 1 profile. And according to Eureka 1 profile, your Eureka server should run on Eureka primary, right? So you can see here, see, one profile has been set active, which is Eureka 1. And according to Eureka 1, it should, see, you can see that the Tomcat has been initialized on port 5002 and it will start running your app on Eureka primary, right? Again, Eureka primary, Eureka secondary or Eureka tertiary, all of them are indirectly pointing to localhost itself, okay? But just to have a thorough understanding. Okay. So now you can see Tomcat has started on port 5000. Okay. Now what we'll do is we will access this Eureka server. Eureka primary is the server name, or you can even use localhost. It will still work. But for easy understanding, just go to Eureka primary because that is your machine. And which is the port on which it is running? 5000. Yeah. So this is my Eureka server. So just run it. And when you run it, have a look. Are you seeing anything new here, all of you? Go through the Sudhir. Don't immediately tell no. When I ask some question, at least take 1 second to see and answer, guys. Yeah. So when you run this, do you see any new thing, guys? Yes. Can you see? Now it is showing the discovery server replica details. So you can see here that for Eureka primary, this is Eureka primary. For Eureka primary, who are the other siblings? Eureka tertiary and Eureka secondary, isn't it? Yeah. These are the two things. Yeah. And of course, till now, no other things are registered. Okay. So this is Eureka primary. Similarly, what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to go back to the app. Don't stop this app. One Eureka server is running. Again, go to this app. Yeah. Right click on it. Go to run as. Again, go to run configuration. Yeah. So choose Eureka server application. And again in arguments, instead of Eureka 1, change the active profile to Eureka 2 now. Okay. Again, now run it. So you're running another instance of Eureka server. Yeah. Please note, in production environment, each you will have Eureka server programs running 3 times in 3 different machines. But in our case, we are just simulating as though it is running on 3 different machines. But logically, internally, physically, it is only 1 machine, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, let it run. Let's watch the console. So you can see this is running as per Eureka 2. And it should start on port 5003, right? So you can see that it is started on port 5003, right? So this is Eureka primary. So I will just to show you, I'll open a different thing. This is Eureka secondary, which is running on port 5003. There it is. And for Eureka secondary, who are the siblings? Eureka primary and Eureka tertiary. Team, are you all with me? Right? And I'm sure you know what is my next step, right? Again, I have one more, right? So I will right click on it, run as, run configuration. And again in run configuration, again, I'll choose this in the arguments. I'll change it to Eureka 3. Yeah. And click on run. So this should start off the 3rd Eureka server. Just wait for it to start. So you can see that it is started according to the active profile Eureka 3. That's the configuration it's picked up. Now, according to that, it should start the Eureka server on Eureka tertiary and listen on port 5004. Right? There it is. Okay, it's up. So I will open one more tab. Here, let me access Eureka tertiary and listening on port 5004. And for Eureka tertiary, you can see Eureka primary and Eureka secondary are the siblings. Team, are you all with me, please? Okay. So again, some general information you might see. Registered, who are the registered replicas? Okay. At present, it is saying unavailable replicas are these two because at present, it's still not shared any state information amongst themselves. So it is still thinking that they are unavailable. And once everything goes fine, this should be fine. Yeah. Again, certain, as I told you, many items on this dashboard might be valid in production environments. Yeah. Sometimes in the local environment, when you're running, okay, it might really not update these things correctly. Yeah. Anyway, coming back to this. So this is how 3 servers are up. Yeah. But tell me one thing, guys. Just because you have 3 Eureka servers up and running, do you think the microservices which are behaving as Eureka clients, do you think they have to register with all the available Eureka servers so that they are available or to ensure high availability? Not really, right? So depending on which zone they are working on, etc., they will have a default Eureka server where they will register. But later, the same information will be replicated and the state information will be shared across all the other servers, isn't it? Yeah. So you can, what we'll do is to simulate that. Purposely, what I'll do is I'll just go to Cafe Info 1. Yeah. And in Cafe Info 1, let me go to application.yml. In application.yml, earlier we had only one Eureka server, right? So I was pointing to that. Now what I will do is here, I will set it as you register to Eureka primary, which is listening on port 5002. Are you all fine, guys? Yeah. Just to simulate, look at what I'm doing for Cafe Info microservice. I'm just setting the default zone as Eureka primary, and which is listening on port 5002. Yeah. So this is what I have just changed. This is the only change I have to do. And now let's run this app. Yeah. Run it as a regular Java app. In the limited amount of resources I'm having on my machine, it's quite difficult to start 3 Eureka servers and 2 microservices and all that. Let's see. I'm just crossing my fingers that it should not be extremely slow. Let's see what happens. So this is my microservice running, Cafe Info. And you can see that it's running and it should ideally pick up a random port. So you can see it is registering the service. Yeah. And it started. Okay. So once it started, anyway, by configuration, I had registered with Eureka primary, right? So I will go to Eureka primary. Let me refresh. Are you able to see Cafe Info service details here? Yes. And remember the last few numbers, 7230. Okay. Just to know that this is the same instance. Now, yes, it is registered with Eureka primary, but Do you think the same state information will also be shared across all the replicas, guys? Yes, this microservice has registered with only Eureka primary. But do you think the same information will be available in the other replicas as well? Yes, that is the whole point, isn't it? Yeah, all servers. Yeah. So let's go to the Eureka secondary. Let me refresh. Do you think this also has the same details, guys? Yes. Okay, let me go to the Eureka tertiary. Let me refresh. Can you see? It has the same details. So this is what we meant by saying when you set up replicated sibling mode for Eureka and you are ensuring that multiple Eureka servers are running in a replicated sibling mode, when microservices register with one of the servers, the same state information is shared amongst all the servers. Yeah, that is how if one Eureka server goes down, the same information is available from other Eureka servers and no communication channel is broken, is it? Yeah. Again, just to simulate, what I'll do is let us pick up Cafe Review. Cafe Review. And in Cafe Review, I will go to application.yml and purposely application.yml. Here, I will ensure that it is registering with Eureka tertiary, yeah, which is running on port 5004. Are you all with me, guys? Just to simulate, assume that this has registered with Eureka tertiary, yeah, which is running on 5004. So let me run this app. So you can say it has picked up a random port. And in a couple of minutes, it should be up. So according to the configuration for this, I had purposely just to simulate, I had registered with tertiary, right? So first let's go and check whether tertiary has the details of this service. Yeah. Okay, it's up. Now let's go to tertiary. I'm in tertiary now. Let me refresh. Does tertiary have details about the cafe review service, please? Yes. So 44D is the last three digits, 44D. But though this microservice has registered with Eureka tertiary, do you think the same information will be shared across the other siblings? Even the others also will have the same details of the state? Yes, right? So just go to Eureka secondary just to test. See, Eureka secondary also has the same details. If you go to Eureka primary, it will have the same details. Yeah. Now for accessing and working, you can pick up the details from anywhere, right? Whichever Eureka server is you can pick up the data from. Team, are you all with me? So for example, Eureka secondary. Okay, Eureka secondary was not at all part of any other process. It only acted as sibling and it got the details from others, right? Just to show you from here only, let me access. I'll access the Cafe Info service. You know the problem now. This is one due to secure URLs. It's giving me an error. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change those URLs. Tomorrow, I'm going to prefer using an IP address. So tomorrow's app, I'm going to change that property. You'll see the difference. Okay, now let me remove this actuator info. Here also this one. Post this. See, many things that we are trying here might work properly if you're using a personal laptop. But please note, when you are trying many things like this in Wipro, on a Wipro laptop, and maybe sometimes if you are working in Wipro domain and you're connected to Wipro Wi-Fi or Wipro domains, you might still have some issues like security issues. Yeah. So as far as possible, we have tried to tell you where and all you could have errors and how you can rectify it. So now I can access it. And similarly, I can enter some. So assume I'm entering a cafe name called Sam and some description. I'll be able to see this cafe. And similarly, it's a secondary, right? Let me access review. Let me add some review for it. FA1, I'll say 4, and I say good options, something like that. Okay, click on submit. So one review is there, one cafe is there, right? Now let us try, let us try that get all method. Get all and this. There it is. So is it working as expected, guys? Yes, isn't it? Yeah. So even with multiple servers, etc., everything's working fine. The advantage here is what will happen if Eureka primary goes down? Yeah. For example, I purposely assume we stop or something happens to Eureka primary. Can I get the data from others? Yes, right. So assume this was the first one that started, right? Correct, 11:38 it started. So assume I stop this primary. Yeah. Now primary is no more available. So you can see here that primary is no more available. So I've stopped it. But the data is still available in Eureka tertiary and secondary, right? So if I just refresh 2 and 3, data will be still available. Yeah. So from here you can still access it. Yeah. Assuming that this also goes down, I'm just closing it off just to simulate. Assume that also goes down. Primary also is not there. Okay. No other things are there. At least you have the data available, details available in tertiary. And from here you can access it. Yeah. What will happen if the third one also goes down? If all the 3 servers are down, what will happen? Of course, okay, it will not work because now we are dependent on the Eureka server for our communication, right? Because we are using Discovery client and we are using Discovery client, we are expecting instances to be given to us. So now your entire communication channel goes down. Team, are you all with me? Yes. Okay. So what do you think, guys? Do you think you can simulate all these things on your single machine like how I have demonstrated? Absolutely, yes. Right. And that is what I precisely want you to do when you start working on your uh, Top Gear assignment. Yeah. So in the Top Gear assignment also, if you recollect, I've already shared the Top Gear assignment with you. Details, if I just go to downloads, this is the document, right? Hopefully all of you have downloaded. Yeah. I'm not too sure whether I have shared one copy of this in the file section. Think I would have done that. Yes, there is. Yeah, I've uploaded. So did you go through the scenario or requirements given, guys? Yes, and based on whatever we have covered till now, What is your feeling? Do you think you will be able to implement this on the same lines as how we did? Mine is a different scenario, of course. I've given a different scenario for you guys to work. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think it is doable? Yes, absolutely. Right. So again, I've given you the lenience here. So depending on what you want, you can. Okay. So here, if you all recollect, the requirement is you need to create this app. Yeah. Where you have assessment management. Assessment management project helps the employees and assessment team to administer, to manage few assessment related tasks. What are the broad functionalities that we require? I've also given a sample flow and sample screens. Either you can stick to this or you want to add additional things, go ahead and add. Yeah. So, and all these details, all these requirements I've given. Yeah. So depending on your requirement, I have suggested how many microservices you can create, but you can create more microservices if you require and all that. Okay, that's left to you. Yeah. But please remember here in this document, I would have asked you to implement a client-side load balancer ribbon wherever applicable. But in the latest version, what is the alternative for ribbon? Yes, Spring Cloud Load Balancer, right? Similarly, yeah, I have asked you to, depending on your need, if there are some important methods and you want them to be guarded and to avoid cascading failures, I'm asking you to use the circuit breaker called Hystrix. But in the latest version, what do you think is the alternative for Hystrix, or which is the circuit breaker alternative? Correct. Resilience forge. So accordingly, you will use. Is that okay, all of you? Yeah. So I will be very eager to look at how you have implemented all this. I'm going to give you time. Once my training gets over also, I will give you a week's time so that you can work on it and then submit it to me for review. Yeah. The steps that you will have to use to submit it to me for review, all that will be shared, yeah, in the MST. I'll share the steps, don't worry. Yeah. But I want you to look at this and slowly start creating your apps. Yeah. Anybody started working on it? Have you created your microservices? Yes, that's nice. Yeah. And today we have completed Eureka, right? Eureka server and Eureka client. So slowly again, you can implement Eureka related details also in your app. Yeah. First try with single Eureka server, see everything's working. Then you can try multiple Eureka servers. Okay. So I'm opening the forum for Q&A now, please. Just give me a minute. Okay, I'm allowing people to unmute themselves. Go ahead. If you have any queries, go ahead and raise your queries. Yeah. Today, 1 minute before you guys raise queries, please remember, okay, please remember, today is the day 5 of our session. That means we have completed 4 days of session. Even today, I can see people asking for MS Teams and MS Team details. I'm not part of that MS Team. Can you add me? This is highly unacceptable behavior. I'm very sorry. I will not be adding any more members to the MS team. It's a clear indication that either you were not present in the rest of the sessions or you have been just for the sake attending without concentrating on the training. I am not adding any more members to the MS team. Today is the 5th day. Still now people are checking with the MS team. Why? Yeah. Don't you think so? Even the training should have some kind of structure and decorum where people are attending and learning. Yeah. Please note, guys, this is a very unacceptable. I'm not going to add any members. Yeah. Phase, unfortunately, we will not be discussing API gateway. Yeah. But I can suggest some articles where you can set up API gateways. But during our restricted amount of time, we will not be discussing API gateway. Any other doubts, please go ahead and unmute yourself and raise.
Hi, Savita, Bharat this side.
Yes, please.
So like we are, two microservices generally communicate through the discovery server, right?
Correct, correct.
Like Eureka. And we have created 3 discovery server. And firstly, we have to, define the URL of that server in our properties file.
Correct, correct.
Yeah. So what if that like we have put primary URL of primary server, and if it is down, it will automatically fetch secondary server. I mean,
Yeah, good
secondary Eureka
question.
server.
Yeah, good question, Bharat. But unfortunately, that will not happen. Yeah. So
Okay.
usually what, okay, good, you asked me. 1 minute, let me share. You can try this also when you guys are trying. Let me share the uh, configuration for a client. Okay. In the client, you can see here that I have used a client property called Eureka client server URL, and I've specified the default zone to be this because I wanted to register into this particular Eureka server. But you know what? Even this configuration is not required. A mere presence of the Eureka client dependency in your pom.xml file. For example, this is my cafe info one. And in the pom.xml file of this cafe info one, you can see that there is a dependency available that I've added for Eureka client. Yeah. The moment you add this dependency, no other setting is required. When you start the app, it will, during the startup, it will automatically start searching for a existence of a Eureka server, and whichever Eureka server is available in that zone, automatically it will register to that available Eureka server. So that is the default behavior, Bharat. Yeah. But in my case, I don't want to use it because I wanted to show how it will register to primary, how the other guy will register to tertiary, and how state information is done. But what you can try is just add this dependency. Don't even add @enable Eureka, @enable discovery client. You will see that automatically during startup of this, it will start searching for the Eureka server. And if Eureka server is not present, it will start failing.
Okay.
Okay. So to keep it really highly available, better not to hard code here. Yes, here what I've done is I've hard coded here, isn't it? Yeah. So if this Eureka primary is not present, obviously during startup it will fail because you have hard coded it to register here. Yeah. And here is where usually in production environments, what happens is, 1 minute, let me see. In our example, we have set up Eureka server, and here you have your microservices, right? You have your microservices here. But in production environments, they will also use a gateway, API gateway. Okay. So when you have your API gateway, all the requests coming from your microservices or from the end user, all of them will go through this gateway. And the gateway will internally take care of talking to the appropriate Eureka servers, registering, deregistering, and all that. So if you have a API gateway setup, then half your problems will solve because this will act as a front controller kind of stuff for your entire communication. Yeah. But unfortunately, during our training, we do not cover this because as it is, our training is 7 WebEx sessions, and including all these things will make the session little more lengthy and not many people will be interested. Okay. But otherwise, API gateway you can use.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Zookeeper is more a service registry than Anjay, very similar to Eureka and Console. Yeah. there is a separate product called API Gateway. API Gateway is not very similar to Zookeeper. Yeah, Zookeeper is more a registry service, very similar to Eureka. I think we spoke about that.
So if you don't hard code that default zone, so like how which one it will take, like?
Again, as we learned earlier, there is a preference order that it has. Usually in a cloud setup, the preference order will be same zone. And in the same zone, whichever Eureka server is there, it will register. If there are multiple Eureka servers, whichever is the fastest, that it will pick up. Yeah. So, and assuming that you have set up replicated server, that should not worry, because any server it registers, the state information anyway is replicated. Yeah. But the default will be same zone preference. And in the same zone, if there are multiple Eureka server, the fastest one is what it will pick up. You can try, guys, when you are trying your labs, right? When you are trying your hands-on, try without giving any, don't give any client instance service URL. Yeah. Only create a regular Eureka server started, and don't even just add the dependency for Eureka client. Don't even bother to add enable discovery client. See what happens during runtime. Yeah. You will see in the console what and all it is trying to do. And if the Eureka server is not up by then, it will start crying, saying, Eureka server is not there, I'm not able to register. Okay, remember, try all these things. Are there any more doubts, please? I saw some doubts coming on the thing, but nobody is asking.
Like in one or like one session, you written instance dot host name equal to localhost. So I think, is that necessary to give, or it will take automatically?
Ideally, it is necessary to give, better to give always. Okay, because like if it does not, if you don't give it, the eviction and renewals and the heartbeats will become a problem. So it's always better recommended to give the host name. Sudhir, Dheeraj, if your DevOps team is taking care of your configuration, just ask them whether they can share a read-only copy of the Kubernetes or any other configuration that they might have written. Many of these configurations, of course, will be part of the setup. As just now I said, for Eureka client, a mere presence of the Eureka client dependency is more than enough for it to behave as a Eureka client. So it's always better that you have a look at your configuration. Half the things of DevOps you might not understand, but of course things of Eureka server, etc., of course you'll be able to do that. Ganesh, for event-driven microservices, the concept will remain the same, but instead of using the regular Spring MVC-based Spring Boot, we have to use reactive programming using Spring Boot. Yeah? So for enabling event-driven microservices, instead of using our regular Spring Boot, which is MVC-based Spring Boot, there is a parallel development stack available for reactive programming in Spring Boot. So, and that is based on reactor. So we will have to build everything using reactive programming. Ganesh.
Yeah, Savita, I have one more question related to the distributed transactions. So, like how we can achieve, I think there is one Saga pattern available. So, is there possible like to demo it, like how a Saga pattern we can design?
See, when you are talking about the transaction management when multiple microservices are there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So again, the transaction management also, especially in microservices, there are products or projects available, or the patterns that are available to manage these patterns. Okay. So for example, 1 minute, I think, let me share my screen. So just let me know once you are able to see my screen, please. So in a distributed kind of setup, whenever you need to handle transactions, transaction management becomes little challenging in a kind of distributed architecture, because broadly, whenever we talk about transaction, one is we need to maintain the asset properties, right? It should be atomic, consistent, isolated, and durable. We all know about that. That's the first requirement. The second requirement is, now because it is distributed in nature, we need to manage the transaction isolation level also. Yeah. So because of distributed nature, you need to also maintain the transactions isolation level. Yeah. So these are the two things. So you might have to use certain properties to manage both these. Plus, in a distributed kind of environment, you might have also heard about something called as two-phase commit. Yeah. So this is one very widely used pattern to implement distributed transactions. So this I would mark it very important. This is a very important pattern while implementing distributed transactions. So in a two-phase commit, what happens is, as the name itself suggests, there are two phases. One is called as the phase one. It's typically called as, I think, if I'm not wrong, prepare phase, I think. Yeah, prepare phase. As the name itself suggests. You can see that what and all microservices are involved, etc. They start preparing. The transaction object is created and initiated and all that in the prepare phase. And in the second phase, we call it as the commit phase. Yeah. And in the commit phase, the entire object gets committed. Yeah. So this is the two-phase commit. So again, this problem, this pattern also has its own issues. Yeah. And that is why there is a new architectural pattern that is called as Saga pattern. Yeah. So what it does is, here, we treat this entire transaction management using a kind of sequence of local transactions, you know. So every microservice will take care of the local transaction, but the entire transaction works in a sequence of these local transactions. So I will have a sequence of these local transactions available, and only when all of them are kind of working well and stuff like that, final commits will happen. Yeah. So there are configurations that you might have to do, and how to implement this. There is again one more pattern called as choreography pattern, and using choreography pattern, we can implement this. Okay. So again, there are products also that are available. So for example, Eclipse also provides certain products where you can use this. Again, it is based on Spring Boot, okay, and others. There is one Axon product, which is a lightweight framework that is very widely used along with Spring Boot, along with microservices. Yeah. So there are products available, like two of them I remember. I think Eclipse also has a product, micro profile or something it's called. Okay. So using these products, you will be able to manage the distributed transaction. Yep. So ideally speaking, orchestration pattern is what we will be using here. It's like there's a sequence. There are local transactions, but when all the local transactions, it's considered as a sequence of local transactions. When all of them are done, then it commits likewise. Yeah. So yes, as we told on day one, implementing a microservice kind of distributed architecture is not very easy. As you saw, one simple activity of transaction itself, there are a lot of things to do. Okay, so the answer for your question is you will have to use products like these, which help you in implementing the Saga pattern, which is in fact a orchestrating pattern, where it will consider a sequence of local transactions. And when all of them are done, then it commits. Something like this can be done.
Yeah, and what is the best way like to log the these like
Again, again, there is a distributed logging that is available. So there are distributed login products that are available that you can mix and match with your Spring Boot and microservices combination. Yeah. So again, it depends on what product you want to use, but there are many products for distributed logging also. Yeah. In fact, for one of our, it's called as distributed tracing also, not only logging, logging and tracing. Okay, there are a lot of products available. Even, for example, even Splunk also, in case you are using Splunk also, you can use, but there are a lot of products for this also. Okay. Very similar to how we have used products. There are products available for this. Okay. Let me try to recollect one or two products and I can suggest. Yeah. Again, for tracing, you can still use Splunk. Splunk or Datadog. There are many, but I think even Dynatrace also you can use. But ideally for again, it depends whether you are using cloud or non-cloud and all that. Okay. Datadog, Dynatrace. All of them also you can use. Guys, please note on day one itself, while I was answering a question that was raised by one of the participants, where one of the participants raised to asking, can you explain the design patterns under domain-driven design and stuff like that? I clearly had told. Please note our training program focuses more on implementation of microservices. There are different programs that run in talent transformation, especially from the Architects Academy. And those programs emphasize more on the architectural patterns. So they talk about what are the architectural patterns that are involved in microservices, what is domain-driven design. In fact, microservices is an implementation of domain-driven design, where one application is consisting of multiple services working together to achieve a goal, and how it is, what architectures are used, what patterns are used, and all that. During our training, we are focusing more on implementing. And if you saw, we have already implemented three, or we are going to talk about three patterns. One is a registry service pattern. We are going to talk about load balancing pattern tomorrow. And day after tomorrow, we are going to talk about the circuit breaker pattern. Yeah. Tomorrow, while discussing about the load balancer, I will also be talking about one more alternative to REST template called as Fiend, yeah, which is a declarative REST client, all that. So during our training, we don't discuss about the architectural aspects of these design patterns involved, guys. Yeah. So I highly recommend you to look for specific training programs from Architects Academy, on microservices architecture. Ours is a plain simple implementation training program where the training program is Java Microservices with Spring Boot. That is the title of our training program. Is that okay, all of you? Great. Are there any more doubts, guys? I have another 7 minutes to go. I highly recommend you to please unmute yourself and ask your questions. I might not be able to keep seeing the chat window and read it all the time. Yeah. So please unmute yourself and you can ask your questions, please. So there is a question from Dhaval. Can we add more than tertiary? I mean, more than 3 siblings. Yeah. What do you think should be your answer, guys? Anybody wants to answer Dhaval's question? Dhaval has asked a question. Can we add more than tertiary? I mean, more than 3 siblings. Absolutely, we can add. Absolutely, we can add. But Dhaval, the idea is, okay, the idea is very simple. Look at it from a practical point of view. Yeah, practical point of view. Assume, I'm just taking a very easy example. Assume I have some document, okay? Assume I have some official, some document or house related some document. Yeah, I want to safeguard it. I don't want to lose it. So what do? I take one photocopy of it. Yeah, so that like if I lose one copy, at least I'll have one more copy, right? I can take another photocopy. I can take another photocopy. But there is absolutely no stopping me from taking 100,000 photocopies, isn't it, Dhaval? Yeah. But when you're taking 1,000 photocopies, is it really useful? Yeah. So I'm taking 1,000 photocopies and I'm going to keep it in 100,000 places in my house. Is it really useful? Not really, right? So it is a management and architectural decision to decide how many replicated siblings are needed. Yeah. So if you have worked on a replication or setting up high availability servers, you will know that 3 is a good number because 3, when we are creating this Eureka servers, remember I was telling you about the zones, availability zones. So you can spread across your Eureka servers in 3 different availability zones so that catastrophically something happens to one region. For example, US region, something catastrophic happens, that server or that data center goes down. At least the Eureka servers are there in the other availability zones. Yeah. So 3 is a good number for setting up a replicated server, but again, it's left to you. Okay. But please remember, everything on the cloud involves cost, right? It involves CPUs, it involves machines, it involves network, it involves memory. So you will have to be a little careful whenever you're deciding. Yeah. 3 is a good number, Dhaval. Should be enough. Again, I leave it to the architects team to decide exactly how much it might be required. Team, any other questions that you have? So if there are no questions, do you think you will be able to work on the given Top Gear scenario on the assessment application And can you create your microservices and set up your Eureka server and Eureka clients? Can you start working on that, please? Not even one person is trying to say yes. Yeah. Out of some 100 odd participants, 70 odd participants. I'm just asking you, do you think you'll be able to work, guys? Yeah. Yes, right? And guys, as I've been telling, just by attending a training, you will not gain anything. Let me be very frank and very clear. See, anybody can attend, right? Anybody can attend, but how will you demonstrate that you have understood? Demonstrating that you have learned and understood is only by doing your labs. Yeah, that is why I share my projects so that you can get a feel of how things work and accordingly you can implement it. Okay. So that's it from me. And we have completed our discussions, but just to finally summarize whatever we have done, at least in our Eureka server kind of discussions. Come, let us summarize. Yep. Please note, Eureka works on a passive service discovery. When I say passive service discovery, Eureka server will not force the microservices and advertise to register itself with the Eureka server. It's a passive service discovery, right? Once the Eureka server is up, services register themselves and find others automatically. Spring Cloud Eureka server holds registrations and it shares information to other registrants. And in case it has been set up to run in a replicated mode, it can synchronize itself with the other servers. Spring Cloud Eureka client is nothing but our microservice. They connect to the Eureka server to first register themselves, and they will also connect to the register server to obtain information about the other clients. And of course, Eureka server is designed for multi-instance use. And Eureka server does not persist or save service registrations. It relies on the client registrations. And once the client registrations is done, it relies on a continuous heartbeat at every interval so that it knows that the instances are active and alive. And if it does not receive the instances heartbeat, it will wait for some time and then it will evict and deregister those instances. Yeah. Typical production uses many Eureka server instances, preferably running in different availability zones or regions, and of course connected to each other as peers or siblings. This is the production usage. Yeah. So as we were discussing, right? How many Eureka servers is a debatable concept. It depends, but 3 is a good number. Yeah. Because there is no end to high availability, right? Yeah. But you will also have to take a balanced stance because every instance is costly, isn't it? Yeah? So accordingly, you will have to decide. Yeah. Team, are you all with me, please? So coming back to the agenda. Can you tell me how many, tomorrow, what are we going to do? Based on whatever we have covered till now. Tomorrow, what are we going to do? Which topic are we going to do? Yes, 4.2. So we'll be discussing about the client-side load balancer. And I will give you a very high-level intro to Ribbon. And the alternative to Ribbon is Spring Cloud Load Balancer. So we will be working on Spring Cloud Load Balancer tomorrow. And guys, you remember till now, which is the Spring supplied template class that we have used to communicate between one microservice and the other microservice? Correct, REST template, right? There is a alternative to REST template, which is a recommended alternative, and that is called as using one product called as OpenFean. Yeah. So I will also be using OpenFean tomorrow along with load balance. So these are the 2 topics that I'll be covering, so that on the last day we are left with only one discussion. Yes, web client also is an alternative to REST template, especially if you are working in a reactive or even a non-reactive, both blocking and non-blocking. It's a fantastic alternative. But apart from web client, another product that you can use is OpenFee. So I'll be talking about OpenFee in tomorrow. So that's it from me today, guys. I'll meet you all tomorrow and we'll look at this module on how you can use the client-side load balance and how do you configure it.